It is my great pleasure to introduce our speakers today. We have Kelly Watts, who is the Assistant Director of Experiential Learning Programs here at Brown. And we have Jocelyn Freelier, Associate Director of Brown in Washington. She's joining us from Washington, D.C. today. So we are so grateful to have them with us today. And then we have two students who will bring in later in the presentation, Sally Ryan, who is class of 2025, and Hannah Menges, who is class of 2026. And both of them have been active in the program and have great information and thoughts on how this could benefit your student and your family. So here we go. Kelly and Jocelyn, please take it away.
Thank you, Mikkel, for that introduction, and thank you to Media Services and our closed captioner for your support. Really appreciate it. We are delighted to be here with you today to talk about a program that really excites both Dr. Freelier and I, which is our Brown Semester Internship Programs. We wanted to start this presentation by actually hearing from you. So we're going to ask you to put yourself in the chat and to share in one sentence an experience that you had when either you were in college or you were a teen. So thinking about if you studied abroad or if you had an internship or maybe an after-school job or service learning, something that you had that was a real meaningful learning experience for you that was outside of the classroom. While you're putting some of your own experiences in the chat, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague who is going to share a meaningful experience that she had that has impacted her even today. Jocelyn?
Yeah, thanks so much, Kelly. So I was going to share that when I was an undergraduate student, I actually did a semester internship program, just like the ones that we're going to tell you about today. And that experience was pivotal for me, not only in the immediate aftermath of my undergraduate education, but all the way up until the present, where I am now helping to implement some of the programs like this on Brown's campus. So I was immersed in a workplace, and I learned about the value of experiential education and the way that it can help students such as myself at the time and such as our two students on the call today to learn not only about their professional goals, but also to really explore personally who they are and who they want to be in this world. It was pivotal for my career trajectory in that it made me decide that I wanted to pursue a PhD and ultimately work in a higher education setting, which is where I am today. So that is, it was a huge, huge moment for me. And I wonder if maybe we could also see what some of the other folks on this call have as experiential educations from their past.
Thanks so much, Jocelyn. I think folks are still answering into the chat, but there was one that had shared that they have an engineering degree from Lehigh, and during their senior year in 1990, they had an externship as part of their degree. Professors found the options and helps to assign students to different projects in their experience. So that is something that we're hoping that your student might consider as we are talking about this program, which seems to be very similar to what your experience was in Lehigh. So thank you so much for sharing. Today, we have a agenda of what we'd like to talk about, and we're going to start our conversation of a little bit of history of Brown Semester Internship Programs. Some programs are newer than others, and some are pretty tenured now, and to share the lessons that we've learned over the years. We'll talk to you in detail about what the structure of these programs are, both the academic and the internship components, as well as the accommodations, the local support, and the accessibility of these programs to all of our students. Most importantly, you will hear from two students who had experiences in Berlin and in our DC location, and then we're happy to answer any questions that you might have. We will finish our presentation of talking about next step and additional resources that you or your student might be interested in considering.
Thanks, Kelly, for that overview. So I'll start with a little bit about the history. So Brown in Washington, which is the program that I oversee, I'm actually joining the call today from Washington, D.C. It has been offered since 2017. And that program, since its inception, has served 96 Brown students and placed them in internships here in Washington, D.C., so that they could glean from these internship experiences and learn about their professional career desires. We have a course that we offer. You'll hear a little bit more about that course. And since 2017, we have a lot of findings that we have learned and that we're excited to share with you.
In 2021, Brown had a growth of remote accessible courses, and with that had an interest in also having additional internship opportunities for students. There was a sense of so many of our students are interning in the summer, but what if we elongated that experience for students so it was longer than a summer and take advantage of these additional remote courses? So there was a committee that was created in 2021, and in 2022, we piloted what we called at that time the Be Brown program. And what this was a 6-month experience for students that occurred during the summer and the fall, and students would be enrolled in Brown remote accessible courses while concurrently engage in an internship experience. There were 2 different locations for this. Students could do something that was tied to political change and society in the US, or they could have an experience in Berlin. We had a small group of students who participated in that program. And what we learned from the pilot is students are interested in a longer internship than the summer, but perhaps 6 months was a little bit too long because students want to do something in the summer and in the semester. So we took a cue from our flagship program, the Brown and Washington program, and restructured our programs to be 1 semester. So that is syncing up with the Brown and Washington program. This year, we piloted 4 cities in Berlin and Dublin in the fall, and in Singapore and Sydney this spring. And those cities will also continue on next calendar year, as well as the Open Campus, which we'll talk a little bit more in detail of what the Open Campus is later on in the presentation.
I mentioned that we have some valuable findings, things that we have learned since 2017 implementing these programs. So I'll take an opportunity to share a little bit about that with you now. The first is that each of these programs has an academic component. They're structured in a way that they facilitate experiential learning. Experiential learning is considered a high impact practice, which means that the students actually will have higher retention of the outcomes of the learning experience than they would in a more traditional learning environment. And what that means, experiential learning, is essentially that they learn by doing something. So the internship experience facilitates some of the academic learning outcomes that come out of this experience for them. We have a course that we offer at each of our locations, and that course is designed to complement the experiential opportunity in the internship and really help parse out some of the learning that's happening on site in the internships. Our students also develop professionally during their internship placements. So there is a lot of knowledge and preparation that comes out of these internship experiences that will help them to expand their view of their potential career pathways. And then we've also seen that the students will have very strong outcomes in those pathways. So having parsed out what they might like to do in the future, the internship experience will also then help facilitate that outcome of landing in that career once they graduate. I wanted to share 2 brief anecdotes with you of things that we have learned that were maybe slightly surprising outcomes. So one of those things is that a lot of our students will come into an internship experience thinking that they might like to work in a particular sector, and will learn throughout the course of that internship experience that actually this isn't the right sector for me. And we consider that to be a really valuable finding for a student who then might choose to pivot and explore something new before they graduate. The idea that they would learn that about themselves and about that sector before they're in a full-time role upon graduation is actually a fantastic finding, and something that we did not really anticipate when we started implementing these programs. The second thing that I'll share with you, and this is sort of fresh on my mind because we had class on Monday and we discussed this, which kind of shows the connection between the academic and the professional components of the programs, is that the students will invariably learn about the potential career options that are available to them through the rest of the cohort. So they're not only doing this hands-on internship experience themselves, but they'll hear about what their classmates and cohort mates are doing and learn secondhand about some of the things that are available to them in their life after graduation, thanks to the experiences of the students around them. So in class on Monday, we did an internship highs and lows, and we talked a little bit about these first couple weeks of the experience, and some of the things that really emerged on Monday in class were the students learning from one another about what their internship placements were like and what the organizational culture looked like in each of those settings. Kelly, would you be willing to unpack a little bit for us some of the personal things that we have seen the students learn?
Absolutely. So as Jocelyn shared, our students are learning a lot academically and professionally, but they're also really growing personally. And I am sharing a graphic that one of our students from our pilot program had shared in his presentation at the end of the class. So as Jocelyn has mentioned, students are enrolled in a course that is tied to their internship experience. And at the end, we asked the students to share what they did, what they learned. And this student was a self-described introvert. And their work for 4 to 6 months was to be a field organizer for a political organization. So this self-described introvert was making a lot of cold phone calls and going out to talk to a lot of people and doing a lot of presentations. And during his presentation in class, he had this graphic. And what he was sharing is that he had this comfort zone, which was the dark blue, and the not uncomfortable, which was the light blue, and then the real uncomfortable, which was red. And that during his internship experience, what he really got out of it was the expanding of the not uncomfortable zone, right? At the end of his internship, he still didn't love making those cold calls, but they no longer made him nervous. And he was no longer petrified before he was going to give a public presentation. So he wouldn't call them his comfort zone, but he's not uncomfortable. And that's what we see a lot in these internship experiences of students really having that growth of, I was uncomfortable doing this at the beginning, and now at the end, I might not love it, but I know I can do it and I'm not uncomfortable doing it. And it's really wonderful to see the students go through that process in the internship experience. So when we're talking about Brown Semester Internship Programs, our programs will have similar structures and really 4 key pillars that you see before you. The first, and this might not be surprising because it's in the name, but the experience will center around an internship. So each student who is participating in this program will have an internship that is specific to them for the semester. Okay. The second is that students are concurrently earning Brown credit. For each of these, we're going to go into detail, but this is the general overview. So for the semester, I'm doing an internship that is going to be about 20 hours a week, and I'm concurrently earning Brown credit. For our students in DC, that's going to be in person, and for our students in our international location, that's going to be remote courses for the most part. The third is that we operate this on a cohort model. So this is a group of Brown students who are going to be in the particular city or location. So the students are taking a piece of the Brown community with them when they are participating in these programs. And fourth, not only are they going to be in the same city as other Brown students, but we operate under a living learning community. So the students are actually going to be housed in the same accommodation as one another. So there might be a Brown student who's living with me, another Brown student down the hall, upstairs, downstairs, in the building next to me. So I have that community with me throughout the program. Where are our locations? So as Jocelyn has shared, our flagship program is our Brown in Washington program. And so each semester, students will have the option to participate in the internship program in DC. This year, we had 4 international locations, as I shared, which are going to be the same locations that we're offering next academic year as well, which is Berlin, Germany, and Dublin, Ireland. And then this semester, we are in Singapore as well as Sydney, Australia. A little bit about how we identify our international locations. There's a few key components that we're looking for. Number one, We want to make sure that the cities are large enough with robust industry so that their program is open to all concentrators. So you'll see most are capitals, but not all, but really large, enriched city with industries so that we can identify internships for the students' behalf, regardless of what their concentration is. The second is we want to make sure that English language is not a barrier for our students when it comes to an internship. You might know that one of our locations is Berlin, Germany, but even in Berlin, our internships are in English. So if a student was interested in utilizing a second language in their internship, we can certainly keep that in mind when we're identifying an internship on their behalf. But all of the internships are in English so that they are not a barrier. The third thing is that we are looking to have diversity geographically. So we have 2 locations that are in Europe, one in Oceania and one in Asia currently. And the last thing that we're looking for is locations that have the infrastructure to support a study abroad program and have partners in the location that can be the anchor for our students when they are there. And I'll go into detail a little bit more about that later. The last program option that is not location specific is the open campus. And this is a unique opportunity where students would identify a location of their choosing in an internship of their choosing. So typically this tends to be a more independent student that had already had an opportunity in mind. So let's say I receive an offer to have an internship or a job in Nashville, Tennessee for the semester. Previously, I would have to separate from the institution if I wanted to take advantage of that opportunity or have a gap semester. But now with this infrastructure, students can participate in that experience and still stay matriculated at Brown from that semester, from that program by enrolling in the course and enrolling in the program. So we don't have as many students who participate in the open campus. I think last semester there were 5 and this semester there are 2. But for a student who has a unique opportunity that they want to continue, perhaps they had a summer internship and they want that to continue throughout the fall, this would be an option for them. Just want to highlight with the open campus that as students are also identifying their own internship and the location, they're also coordinating their own housing, but will continue to be tied to the institution academically through the course.
Yeah, so let's take a second to talk a little bit more about the academic component of these internship programs. So on the left-hand side, you'll see a little bit about the Brown and Washington program. And on the right-hand side, we have some information about our international locations. But one thing to note, regardless of the left or the right, all of our students are full-time students. They remain, as Kelly said, matriculated at the university, enrolled in a full semester's course load of classes at Brown. That's an important thing to note because it can impact their financial aid. So the students, because they are full-time, are still eligible for all of the same benefits that they would have if they were on campus in Providence. In Washington, D.C., the students enroll in a 2-credit class that is the Internship Practicum Seminar. That's the class that I mentioned was happening on Monday, and it helps the students to unpack and learn about their internship experiences live as they are happening. We also offer on-site courses. We have a partnership with the Watson Institute in which we offer an international and public affairs course, and upcoming in the fall, we'll also be offering a course with the School of Public Health for students who are interested in learning about public health policy. And then the students have the option of enrolling in additional courses as remote accessible courses. So the university has a variety of courses that are offered for students who are enrolled in our remote programs. And so they also can partner with us, the program staff, and with the departments and their concentrations to identify what those courses are and round out their course load while they're here in Washington, D.C. The international locations work very similarly. The course number for the practicum course is slightly different. It's University 1221. It is also a 2-credit class that will facilitate the exploration that the students are getting in their internships. And then the students have the option of enrolling in courses that are offered synchronously and asynchronously across campus. The 1 to 2 remote courses, like we mentioned, the remote accessible courses that are facilitated by departments, and they can work with program staff, Kelly in particular, to identify those courses and to make sure that they have that full course load. As far as the internships are concerned, this is a huge component of the program, as we've already mentioned. These internships are on site and they're typically around 20 hours a week. Some of our students will have internships that have longer hours, but this ends up being about the average is around 240 to 280 hours per semester of internship experience that they are getting. In Washington, D.C., the internships are sourced by the students with support from me and with support for the Center for Career Exploration. So we have a mechanism of working with students one-on-one to identify internship experiences that are in their field and that are aligned with their interests to make sure that they are getting the experience that they want. And then in the international locations, we work with a provider who is actually going to help facilitate and place those students in their internship experiences on site. The provider is really instrumental in working with the students to identify exactly what it is that they hope to get out of the experience, and then we'll look for those experiences on behalf of the student in each of those locations.
And Jocelyn, I'll just elaborate on that a little bit. So as I shared, one of the criteria as we're identifying our international locations is having those third-party organizations that are on the ground that can support our students, both physically when our students are there, but also with the area of expertise of industry and internships in the location. So when I'm speaking with students and I'm talking to them about this particular process, and particularly in our Singapore, Dublin, and Sydney, it's a more customized approach to the internship placement. The way that it works is as students are applying to the program and they've been admitted, we're continually having conversation, and it's also outlined in their application of what kind of internships are you interested in? What kind of goals are you hoping to set for yourself? What kind of skills are you hoping to develop? And from those conversations, our partners will identify an internship that's really specific to the student. The student still has agency on whether or not they're interested in that internship. So the way that it would work is we'd have a conversation with the student and say, okay, Hannah, based on everything that you've shared, we think that this internship is the best fit for you based on your concentration, your interests, and the experience you've had at that time. And Hannah would be able to say, yes, that's exactly what I'm interested in. Thank you so much for listening to me. I'm really excited. And then the students will have a conversation with the organization to confirm. Or alternatively, the student would say, actually, now that I've seen the opportunity, I think I'd rather go this way instead of that way. And then the partner will identify another opportunity for the student. So it really is a continued conversation between the experts on the ground, our partners, and the student to ensure that they are getting an internship that really fits specifically what they're looking for.
Fantastic.
Where will our students be living? So as we shared, these programs are operated on a living learning community. So all of the students are going to be living together for their location-based program. The open campus, the students are identifying their own accommodation, but for our location-based, Brown will coordinate the accommodation on their behalf. They'll be living with other Brown students. Most often in our locations, they're also living with other students from other universities, or they might be living with other folks in the community. It really depends on the different learning environment that they are going to be in. In terms of local support, so Jocelyn is in DC, as well as some instructors. For our international locations, our third-party providers or our partners are in that location. And so students will always have access to 24/7 support in our location-based program. So I'm having a hard time with my internship, I sprained my ankle, I want somebody to talk to. There's always going to be support on the ground in our location-based programs. In addition to the courses that the students are taking and their internship that they're participating in, we also want this to be a real holistic experience for the students. So there will be co-curricular program in all of our locations that can vary from events with alumni or walking tours or going to museums. What we really want for our students is not only is this an internship experience, but this is a cultural immersion experience. So we'll really balance the experience that they'll have that opportunity to connect with their community, not just participate in the internship as well as their courses. And the final level of support, as we shared, this is a cohort-based model. So not only will they have our full-time staff and our local partners on the ground, but they also have each other to lean on during the experience when they are frustrated with a supervisor or getting a bit of that homesickness. They all have their peers for support as well. When we were designing these programs, it was really with accessibility top of mind. So first, these programs are open to all concentrators, especially with the open curriculum. And if a student has, has a sense that they're interested in this program earlier on in their career, they should be able to fit this into their curriculum. Many of the questions that were asked prior to the start of this webinar was, does this mean that students have to have an additional semester at Brown? Does this require a 9th semester? Absolutely not. Because the students are earning credit, they're earning Brown credit, they should still be able to graduate in the time that they want to graduate. In my experience, quite candidly, the only concentration that gets to be a little bit difficult is engineering. And that is because of the sequence of courses, the number of sequential courses that are needed for their concentration, although there was one engineer who did the open campus last semester. So it's not impossible, but for the large majority of concentrations, students should be able to seamlessly build this into their program. We absolutely encourage our students to meet concurrently with us, but with their academic advisor to make sure that they have all of the information they need so that this can be a complement to their academic program and does not hinder them from graduating on time. Our international locations and DC location are open to our international students who are on F1. The open campus, if the student decides to stay in the US, is not open, and that's because of the limitation on the number of remote accessible courses that students who are on an F1 visa can take. But international locations in DC are absolutely open for our international students on an F1. What does this program cost? So our program fee structure is similar to being on the Brown campus. Students are still going to be charged Brown tuition because they're enrolled in Brown courses. So that is the same as if they are in Providence. Secondly, for housing, we are coordinating this housing on the student's behalf. And the housing fee that students will be charged is the same housing fee that they will have if they were living on campus in Providence. So this semester, the housing fee is $48.25. So for our students who are participating in our DC and international locations, the housing fee is $48.25. I must tell you, the housing in Singapore and Sydney is much more expensive than it is in Providence, but the cost to the student is the same as Providence, and the institution will subsidize that other half. So for the student, financially, it will just feel what it is to be in Providence. Students are not billed a meal plan because what I failed to mention in the accommodation is that the accommodation is apartment style. So the students will be living in apartments with other Brown students and has access to a kitchen, either a large community kitchen or a kitchen inside their apartment. So since students have access to a kitchen, there is not a meal plan. So students won't be billed a meal plan for that semester. If I'm a highly aided student or a fully aided student, and I typically have funding that will cover my meal plan for that semester, since I'm not billed a meal plan, I still have access to those funds. So these programs are billed onto Banner. My financial aid is going to be billed onto Banner. And if I'm a fully aided student, because I'm not charged for the meal plan, but I have funding for the meal plan, at the start of the semester, I can actually get those funds back to me as a refund. And that's what I will use to buy my groceries throughout the semester. Finally, students are charged some campus fees, but not all campus fees. There is a student resource fee that all students are charged, but there are 2 fees that students won't be charged because they're specific to being on campus. So it's really important for us that financially this program feel very similar to students on campus. One thing that is not included is that students are responsible for their flight to and from the particular location. We don't operate with a group flight because we know our students are going to be coming from many different locations. As I mentioned previously, when I was talking about the internships, English is the only required language for our internship experiences. Again, if a student was interested in using their language, should they have another language? I do speak some German. I'd like to use that in my internship. I do speak Mandarin. I'd like to use that in my internship in Singapore. We will certainly keep that top of mind when our partners are identifying an internship, but all of our internships are in English. And finally, we get this question a lot from our students, which is how competitive is the application? By design, the application process is non-competitive. If a student thinks that this is a program that is a good fit for them, then we think that it is a good fit for the student. There is no letter of recommendation in the application. What is required of students is that they are in good social standing at the university, meaning that they don't have any outstanding incidences for things that occurred on or off campus. Other than that, if a student thinks that this is a good program for them, then we also think the same and can accommodate them.
Yeah, I might add a little bit onto this last point as well, Kelly. Some of the internships are competitive. So especially for our students who want to come to Washington, D.C. and who want to intern at the White House or who want to partner with the Brown in Washington program to find one of these highly competitive internships, we would really encourage that the student get in touch with us as soon as they think that they might be interested. Because although the application for the program is non-competitive, they should view us as their allies in working towards some of these competitive internship applications and placements. And so really, the sooner they think that they might be interested in participating in one of these programs, they should really get in touch with us to talk about what those interests are and how we might be able to support that application at a really competitive environment.
Great.
On that note, I'm excited to pass over the floor to our two students who have joined the call and who have agreed to share some of their experiences with you. So I might start off by asking each of you if you would be willing to share your name, who you are, and which program you are an alumnus and what your experience was.
Yeah, sure. I can go first. Sorry. My name's Sally Ryan. I'm class of 25, and I am an alumni of the Brown in Washington program, and I interned at the White House in the Office of Management and Budget. I was really interested to do this program because I really like the aspect of doing the experimental learning and like internship program while also maintaining my status as a Brown student and getting credit for it during the semester. I was also really excited to get off the Providence campus. I love Brown, but I'm from Providence, and so I was very excited to see some other areas and just experience the big city of DC. I'm an international and public affairs concentrator, so I was also interested in seeing more government, and so DC was a really great fit for me.
Hi everyone, I'm Hannah and I'm a sophomore studying biology. And last fall I was in Berlin. And while I was in Berlin, I participated in a computational biology internship in one of the labs at Humboldt University, which is the partner school in Berlin. And I chose to participate in this program also because I was particularly drawn to the internship aspect of it. I'd say I'm more of a hands-on kind of learner, so I appreciate experiences where I can put into practice the things that I'm learning in a classroom setting. And not only this, but also the fact that I could still be taking Brown classes and get credit towards my concentration was something that was pretty important to me because I am still a sophomore and I didn't want to set myself behind early on in my academic career.
Fantastic. Thank you both so much for that. We want to give the folks on the call an opportunity to ask questions of you and to hear about your experience. But before we transition to that, I'm going to ask you what has been what was the most rewarding or the most memorable part of your experience in your internship or in the city that you chose, and why. And so maybe we'll start with Sally and then Hannah ask you to share the same thing.
Yeah, so first I'm going to answer that sort of in two parts. So first, one of the best things about the program for me was the like cohort-based model and just being in DC with so many other people who were passionate about similar things to me and hearing about all their different internships and learning from them. And I had two other friends in the program who worked in the White House as well, so we would all get up and commute to work together, taking the subway, and it was just like such a good like energy and vibe for our internships, and just like a great memory. And I'm still friends with all these people, and it was so fun to be with all of them and explore DC, which DC is amazing. I really enjoyed the city. I went to a bunch of museums there, and it was just a great learning experience outside of my internship as well. And then within my internship, I just had such a great time learning about like a more intricate and like more from the inside view of how government is run, in the sense that I've taken US history courses and civics courses, but to actually be there and see everything happening and how it happens and who really makes decisions at the end of the day was just a really interesting experience to learn.
Yeah, for me, I think I would say, I mentioned earlier that I did a computational biology internship, and it was something that I think I kind of I didn't really want to do initially, but I knew it was something that would be really useful to me in the long run. And I think by the end of the experience, I ended up kind of shifting my perspective on computational biology, and just like being a bit less afraid of it. And now it's, something that I know I can do, I think, as Jocelyn was mentioning earlier. And yeah, that was particularly rewarding for me.
We can also open up the Q&A to anyone on the call who might like to ask a question of our students.
All right, great. Thank you, everyone. While folks are getting their student questions ready, we did have a few that came in for Kelly and Jocelyn. I'll try and go through those pretty quick. I want to start off by, we have had a lot of questions about specific concentrations. My students in engineering, my students in pre-med, my students in biology, all different sorts of concentrations. How do you work this out so that it fits with their program? Do they use their advisors that they already have within the college, or is there something different, or is it a combination? If you can speak to that.
Yeah, so I see this really as a joint effort, right? Because I have experience in the program, but their academic advisor will also have experience in their curriculum. So usually when a student has an interest, they'll end up meeting with us one-on-one, and we'll kind of talk specifically about where they're at and the number of credits, the number of semesters, if there are requirements that they need. So we'll have that kind of discussion with them to see where they are at, what semester might best work for them. And then we'll talk about your interests. So as I shared, the intention of these programs is to be open to all concentrators. And so there would never be a student who comes in who says, I am studying engineering, I am studying something else, and me say, well, then this isn't for you. As I shared, engineering is the one concentration that does get to be a little bit tricky, or certainly want to have multiple conversations with the academic advisor just to ensure that the student has all of the sequential courses that they need, and that participating in this experience isn't going to add additional semester, but it's really a team conversation and getting an understanding of what the student wants and talking about how we can make that happen with them.
Great, thank you. We also had a question about open campus. If you could talk a little bit more about that. Does the advising work the same way? Are the costs similar, et cetera?
Yeah, so I saw that there was a question in terms of like, how does a student identify an internship? That process is similar to how a student would identify an internship in the summer or at another period of time. So that is, I am physically in the same building as our colleagues in the Center for Career Exploration, and you might have attended their webinar that they had a few weeks ago. But we do encourage our students to seek out that resource so that they can understand the general process of identifying for internships. And then it's just shifting. Typically, you would look for an internship in the summer, but now you're looking for a semester. And I will share with you is that, as our students are looking for longer internships in the semester, what some of them are finding is that that might be a little bit less competitive of a market, because many, many students are looking for internships in the summer, but not as much for the semester. So some are finding that it's a little bit more fruitful of an experience looking for a program in the semester. what some of our open campus students has shared with me is that they're actually using the open campus as a tool when they're applying for a summer internship. So one student in particular, when they went to an employer for a summer internship and said, hey, I just want to let you know that I can actually be here for 6 months, with the idea that they would do this summer internship and then they would do the open campus in the fall. So they have built themselves a 6-month internship because they knew that they had the open campus to go to. So we will certainly support the student, and we will also ask them to utilize all the great resources at the Center for Career Exploration. In terms of the billing, students are still billed for tuition because they're still enrolled in Brown classes, as well as some fees. But because we're not coordinating the housing on their behalf, they are not charged a meal plan, nor are they charged housing.
Thank you, Kelly. And you answered another question that had come in along the way about internships segueing into a summer opportunity. Jocelyn, on a similar note, have you seen students who have been part of the program and then got employment later because of it?
Yeah, absolutely. And the question about summer semester is also a really pertinent question when thinking about the Washington programs and employment prospects, kind of broadly speaking. So we have a summer program as well, and we have a lot of students who there was a question in the chat about, how does this open doors for future possibilities? So students who come during our semester program stay eligible for the summer programs as well, and may find that it helps them to identify exactly where they would like to do that summer internship. And then absolutely, we have a robust group of young alumni here in Washington, D.C. who have participated in our programs, or who are Brown alumni who did not participate in our programs, but who live in DC anyway. And we make sure to connect everyone so that our students who are here on the semester internship program can learn from the experiences of those young alumni, can network with those young alumni, and can think about where they might like to land in Washington, D.C. after they complete their program. So there is absolutely a connection between these experiences and then the outcomes that we see afterwards.
Great, thank you. And Jocelyn, do you have any recommendations on what semester and what year of a student's journey here at Brown that they take advantage of this opportunity?
Yeah, so there is one restriction, which is that our students need to have completed a certain number of credits and before they're eligible for these programs. So for students who enter the Brown campus kind of as a traditional student, that typically means that they're eligible for the first time in their sophomore years. They need to have completed their freshman year coursework on the Brown Providence campus. It works a little differently for students who are resumed undergraduate education students or who are transfer students. So in those cases, we would really advocate that you kind of work one-on-one with us in order to determine at what point you're eligible for the programs. As far as recommendations as to when these students should think about these programs, I think that the sweet spot is sort of the second semester, sophomore year, and then forward for a student. I think that the students, depending on where they are in their journey as an undergraduate student, get slightly different things out of the programs based on where they are in their careers or in their undergraduate education. So our sophomore students tend to take a much more kind of exploratory lens with these programs, whereas I have a student now who is a graduating senior. He'll finish his degree in May, and he's spending his last semester in Washington, D.C. And his goal is not exploratory, it's to get a returning job offer. When he finishes his internship, he hopes to have a conversation with a supervisor about staying full-time in that role. So it really kind of depends. There isn't a right answer so much as that there is a right answer based on what you're looking for potentially. And can be flexible based on the unique student and that one-on-one approach of figuring out exactly how to give them the experience they want.
Great.
And I'll just add that I think I've seen a near even distribution actually across the programs between sophomores, juniors, and seniors.
That's really helpful. I want to get in a few student questions. Hannah, we had one specifically about Berlin. Can you talk about how the accommodations were there? And what part of the city were you living in?
Yeah, so the accommodation was, we were living in an apartment, and I was living with another Brown student who's also in Berlin. And so, it had kitchen, living room, balcony, bathroom, had all the amenities. It was fully equipped. As for the location, it was in a residential neighborhood that was also pretty accessible to a bunch of shops, cafes, restaurants, that kind of thing. And if you want the specific location, or the neighborhood was called Kreuzberg, if you're familiar.
I am not familiar with Berlin, but I have a feeling somebody on this call is, so that might be helpful for them. I'll ask one for you, Sally. What semester of your academic year did you participate, and how did that work for you? Did you feel like you picked a good time for yourself?
Yeah, I did fall of my junior year. So last semester, I was in DC, and I felt like that was a very good time as I had had enough time on campus to sort of explore the open curriculum in terms of what classes I liked and what sort of concentration I wanted to go into. And then that allowed me to tailor my internship choice for what I wanted to do, what I think I want to do in the future more. So
Thank you. Kelly, we had a follow-up question to something that you mentioned earlier about open campus. It was about the housing. So if they're participating in open campus, does that mean that they're responsible for their housing and their meals?
Great, I just saw that. Thank you for asking that, Mikkel. So students are responsible for coordinating their own housing and their own meals. But again, if I'm a fully aided student, the cost of my attendance for that semester is still the same as if I'm in Providence. It's just what I'm going to be billed is just campus fees and tuition. But if I'm fully aided, all of my aid is still going to be posted to my Banner account, and then I will get those funds back as a refund at the start of the semester. So when we're coaching students about what that looks like, it is to be mindful that they won't receive the refund until probably the second week of classes in terms of when they can expect that those funds will be in their account, but they will still have access to those funds because the cost of attendance is still going to be the same. It's just that they're responsible for finding that apartment and buying their own groceries.
Thank you. And I know throughout this presentation, we've mentioned a lot of different types of internships. Hannah and Sally have talked about theirs, but can you give some other examples of internships that you've seen students take part in?
Happy to. I'll go first. So we are currently in Sydney, and we have an economics student who is currently in a financial consulting firm in media services. So the way that he explained it is essentially the companies are the professor, and they only know how to say things in very technical terms, but then you have the teaching assistant that is really saying things in layman terms so that people understand it. And that's what his firm does. And so what he's been doing is writing up press releases that have been sent to the Australian Stock Exchange, and also put together a package. He's only been there for 7 days, but also put together a video package that was going to be on national television for one of the companies that he works with. So that's just one of the examples that our economic student is doing in Sydney. Did you want to share one, Jocelyn?
Sure. Yeah. In Washington, D.C., we had Sally, who was at the White House. We have a lot of interest in that potential program. We have students who want to intern and work on the Hill every semester regularly. We have students who are working for their representative or their senator on the Hill. It's also very common to see interest in federal agencies and entities. So we have a student this semester who's placed at the Department of Commerce. We have students who want to intern at the Supreme Court or at the Department of Justice. We have a partnership with the Africa Bureau at USAID, where we can help students find work in international development, so internship placements there. Then it's also kind of switching gears in a completely different sector. Super common that we have students who want to work at nonprofit organizations here in Washington, D.C. So we see a lot of our environmental studies concentrators who want to work in environmental nonprofit in some capacity or another. And then we have students who take interest in organizations like the Kennedy Center and the Smithsonian, which is like yet another opportunity here in Washington, D.C. So it really, as Kelly has said, it really is a matter of working one-on-one with each student to identify what the best opportunities are for them in the respective location.
Great, thank you. And Jocelyn, I'll stay with you, but I also want to ask this of Kelly as well. One of the questions that came in was, what's the benefit of doing something like this and staying matriculated at Brown rather than just doing your normal coursework and then in the summer do an internship and not being matriculated. Why would somebody want to do something like this instead of just an internship when they're not taking classes at Brown?
Yeah, I'm happy to start and then kick it off to Kelly to add to the answer. I think that this is a yes and. I think that the students should be exploring during the summer, and they should also be leveraging opportunities like ours to continue exploring. I think that instead of seeing these as opportunities that compete with one another, I think that they're actually opportunities that enhance one another. So we talked a little bit about the semester opportunities that can lead to summer opportunities. We've also had students who do a summer internship here in Washington, D.C., and then they talk to their employer and say, hey, I have this semester option, can I stay? So we had one student who was at her organization for almost 9 months from the time that she started her summer internship to then continued it through the semester and into the fall. Some of the other benefits that come along kind of like with the semester internship program specifically include the opportunity to be in that cohort model, to learn from the other people who are on your program and to learn from the environment itself and the structure of the program. The program has a rich co-curricular component. So, I'll use Sally as an example because she was here in the fall, but she probably met dozens of Brown alumni over the course of her time here, whether the young alumni or the folks who are affiliated with our Brown Club in DC or some of our guest speakers. So it's really that experiential education piece that is connecting the academic and the professional together to offer kind of a unique combination of both during the semester. Kelly, I'm confident that there are other things that I've overlooked here.
Well, I'll just add two things. One is my background is in study abroad, and I refer to these programs as cousins to study abroad. So we will often see students who were thinking about a study abroad program, but they weren't quite sure because they were also interested in doing an internship. And these programs actually lend itself to both, where a student can have a cultural immersion experience, but also have work experience. What tends to be a little bit different for students when they are choosing a semester internship versus traditional study abroad is that I think they get to see a different part of the city, because the population of those that you're working with tend to be varied in age, right, as opposed to being on a college campus, and you're getting to see what it would be like living there. So one of our students who's currently in Singapore wanted to do the program because they're thinking that they might want to work in Asia after graduation. And he's like, I feel like a real Singaporean because we're going to work, we're coming home, we're going to lunch together. And so it's feeling like, oh, this is what my life could be like. So I see students who are interested in, perhaps study abroad, but also wanting to get a glimpse of what life might be like afterwards. The last thing I'll add is what I typically hear from students when they're interested in this program, which is they're looking for something different than what they've been doing on campus, right? So when you're participating in this program, you're still enrolled in courses, but there's a different rhythm when you are going to work every day. Then I have classes throughout the day, or I'm spending most of my weekends studying and writing papers. The rhythm is just a little bit different. And again, students are still doing coursework, but it feels different than what the experience is on campus. So from the student's perspective, that's where I hear most often is they love being at Brown. They're here from 8 semesters, but maybe one of those semesters, I will do something a little bit different that will also be academically, professionally enriching.
Thank you. I think we have about 4 or 5 minutes left. So before we go, I do want to get last words from Hannah and Sally. Just to, if parents are listening to this and there's, they have questions, can you just provide like your top takeaway from your experience in the program? I'll start with you, Hannah.
Yeah, I'd say that probably my top takeaway was that I feel like I'm more confident in my ability to take on like a subject within my field, say computational biology. I'm more comfortable in tackling it head on because I've done it now this past fall, and just going forward in the future, that kind of fear won't stop me. That's probably the biggest one for me.
That's great. And I know, Kelly, that was that diagram that you showed earlier. It's similar kind of thought. Thanks, Hannah. How about you, Sally?
Yeah, I'd first like to just like echo sort of what Jocelyn and Kelly were saying about like all the benefits of doing it in the semester as opposed like with a summer one as well, but just sort of all the benefits that doing it in a semester has. As sort of someone who might not have had as much sort of resume experience, I think doing it in the semester when it's a little bit less competitive sort of made it possible for me to do what I wanted to do with my internship. And so then with that, having that internship opened a lot of like new information to me about how the system works in order to get future internships and like future employment. I know a little bit more about the system and how to work within that system to advance my career and my career goals, sort of. So I think that was a big takeaway for me.
Thank you so much, Sally. And I know you're in the science library today, so there's a lot of activity over there. Please do contact me at family@brown.edu if you have more questions for Kelly or Jocelyn or myself, and we'd be happy to get back to you. But Jocelyn, Kelly, Hannah, Sally, thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you to everyone in the audience, wherever you are in the world. We hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you.